Welcome, folks. We are here with Elliot Martin. It's good to have you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me on.
Roommates are back.
Oh my gosh! Don't get me started on the pod.
Yeah, all three of us
The
at one point.
Potsdam house.
Yep.
Oh, we were going to go a
Let's
different
talk about
direction. We were going to go a different direction with this episode, but now it's just the Potsdam. You've been on the list for a while. We wanted to have you on and talk to you. You're fun to talk to, and you're a good friend. So it's another way to just kind of steal you, and now you have to spend time with us.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate you guys having me on. I mean, I value both of you guys a lot, and so thankful for your friendships. And yeah,
Roger
any
that.
time with you guys is a good time.
And that's all the time we have for today.
Right there. That's a good place to end.
No, that comes right back at you for sure. It's fun because our friend group is a little bit unique that way. Mm-hmm. Like I don't know a lot of friend groups who are as tight, even if we're not together so much. We were just talking about kind of the life creep of how things change, and you get your own family, your own house, your own obviously marriage, but then your business ventures and what you do for jobs, and it's like, do we have time to ever talk or just hang out and just see how everybody's doing? Yep. But it does feel like the comfortability is there that we can do that. Yeah, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, you always back up right where you left off, right? So
yeah, for sure. That is nice. Why don't you just go ahead and tell our listener,
which we now know is Calder.
We figured out last time it was Calder. No, you could tell the folks just who you are, what you're about, and what you do, kind of.
Yeah, so I'm Elliot Martin. Grew up here in Lewis County and had the privilege of growing up with Brock, and then around end of high school, I got to know Nick pretty good, and then Nick and I were roommates for a while in
4 years
college. Yeah,
straight.
Yeah, sweet.
That's a pretty good run.
And Brock joined us at the tail end. Yeah, his masters
at the pinnacle, we might say.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
so that's my connection with these guys. I think was a farm kid growing up. Grew up on a family farm. Was blessed with wonderful parents who raised me in a great Christian home, and have so much to be thankful for from that upbringing. Grew up with two awesome brothers, Ethan and Jason. Shout out to you guys if you watch this, but great brothers. Really loved sports growing up and working on the farm. That was kind of like day-to-day life, right? If you weren't farming, you were throwing the ball around, doing that kind of stuff, and then
backing each other down in the post, throwing up some alley-oops.
Fostered the competitive spirit for sure.
Oh yeah, well, brothers will do that.
Had a few tussles in there as well, but all good stuff. What I do now, I work as a engineer for Grand Slam Safety here in Krogan, New York, doing athletic field construction, which is really fun. I love to work in the athletic industry. That's just great. Part of what got me there, I think, into engineering was kind of my upbringing on the farm. Really loved getting my hands in on the mechanical side. Also loved drawing as a kid. That was one of the things that I had a natural bent to, I think, and my parents kind of saw that and got me doing art lessons when I was a kid. And looking back at most of my art, like some of it's decent, but a lot of it was just like me copying pictures. Like I would see a picture of like a landscape or a building or something, and I was super good at drawing buildings. So I would just draw a horse. I've got one on the wall at home that I'll draw I'll send you a picture of, but I'm not drawing on the spot.
Greg Riddick is good at those.
That is the test of like an artist. If you can draw a horse, you're good. If you can't,
when we have Greg Riddick on, I'm gonna show him that video. Benny's horse versus Greg Riddick's horse.
Oh man.
He
is not an engineer. I will try to find it, and we will pull it up at some point. I don't know if I can find it today, but hilarious. Benny draws this beautiful horse, and then whatever that was Greg drew was trying to be a horse. It looked a little bit more like an elephant, and I don't know, some other animals mixed in there.
Oh, man.
That's so great.
He
definitely is not an engineer like you.
Well, it was interesting. So like as I got older, I found that art was less appealing to me. And then as I got into the math and sciences in high school, it really kind of clicked for me that, hey, like the physics, the math, all that kind of stuff was really where I had a natural bent. And then once I started looking into, okay, how do I actually apply this? Mechanical engineering seemed like a good fit. And like, I feel like in terms of like creative instinct, I have less of that and more just like mechanical inclination and that kind of stuff. So like, I feel like artists, if you're a true artist, you have a great creative like mind and knack, and you can just like put the pen to the paper and it just like comes, right? Where for me, it's more of just like attention to detail and like that kind of drawing type of thing, where landscapes and drawing, all that kind of stuff just is a much easier versus like I'm trying to create something from pure imagination, right?
Yeah,
so
that's like really interesting. Yeah.
So
well explained.
Yeah.
So when you look at, when you're out in public, are you the kind of engineer who's like thinking about how everything's built?
Oh, dude, absolutely. Yeah. So we just went on vacation down to Pennsylvania, and we went out to this ice cream place, Laughs Ice Cream in Birmingham, Pennsylvania. Very like delicious ice cream. They, Mennonites that make it right there, and they've got like these, just your normal picnic tables and chairs outside, but it's all made out of like poly deck boards. Like it's not just like your normal like Adirondack chair, it's all poly stuff. And so like I'm like looking at it, I'm like, oh, this is kind of neat, and I'm like taking pictures. And then like we went to like this like adventure farm down there, tons of activities for the kids. It was a blast. And they've got like all these wagons that you like, tow your kids around in or whatever. And we had one growing up that was kind of like radial flyer, but like a wooden version. It's like Amish made or whatever. They've got like a souped up version of that down there. So I was like taking pictures of it, and they're like the running gear on it and everything. And I'm like, man, I think I could build one like this. Like this is like a beast of a, wagon to tow your kids around in. So this is all the weird stuff, right? Often think about how it works. We kind of want to know and understand how it works. And that's just kind of how my mind.
Yeah. Pat Hardy said the same thing, kind of. He said that's the way his mind works. He wants to know how it works to a T, and then can kind of learn that way.
Pat's a genius.
Yes, he is. He's a very smart guy. Episode 12. Check it out. Moving into, you mentioned that your parents kind of put some things in front of you to kind of pique your interest in things that you already looked like you were interested in. That's kind of like a parenting genius hack. And I don't think a lot of parents do that. See stuff in their kids that maybe they'd be interested in, and then facilitate opportunities for them to, even just to see if it's there. And if it's not there, then okay. But just kind of fostering their desires or what they like to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think mom and dad did a good job of that. I think as a parent, now, I don't feel like my kids are quite there yet, but like, I know that's going to be a piece that's like coming down the pipe soon. And I hope and pray that I can do a good job of doing that. Mom and dad were always very open in conversation with us about it. It wasn't like they were trying to like strategically, at least as far as I know, maybe they were a bit like, we know this about him. We're going to strategically put you in this position so that, usually it was an open conversation of like, hey, like we see that, you've been doing this. Is this something you want to try or that kind of thing? So
are you big into Legos?
Lincoln Logs? Went through Lincoln Log phase, Lego phase for sure.
Seems like a lot of engineers would say that.
Yeah. Didn't do as much like connects as like some friends in college did. Like that was a big thing. We didn't get into that as much growing up, but Legos for sure.
Like the robotic connects things, like making the robots.
Yeah.
I was going to say all the nerds, stuff. But no, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, connects and they're a lot more intricate for sure.
Right.
What age would you think that seeing a child's interest would be something to kind of push?
Yeah.
Nick, do you know?
No pressure. It stresses me out, dude. I lose sleep over that. It feels like,
like
you were saying,
I think my 2.5-year-old is just going to be in demolition just the way, the way that she leaves the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Nick can probably speak better to that because, you have a few that are a little older than I do.
I feel like it's a lot of pressure. Like it's actually good to hear how your parents did it. Open conversation. Like, that never occurred to me. Huh, what do you know? Like just talk to them about it. Yeah, I think about that a lot. Like, man, my kids are getting to the age where, like Levi is, where we really should, I want to see like where his interests are. So maybe I can help him explore new things. And it feels like a lot of pressure to me to get that right and at least find something he could. Sometimes I'm like, man, it feels like controlling his future, and I don't want to do that either. But yeah, it does feel like a lot of pressure to help them find an interest. The older they get, the more pressure I feel. So it kind of stresses me out a little bit.
Yeah, it's
important.
It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Anyway,
I feel like for me at this stage, a lot of like feeding into their interests is just like when I'm around them and they want to play and do something that they're interested in, I'm just going to try to join them in doing that, right? Like, because that's what they're interested in. You know, if Ollie wants to try his hand at building Legos, I'm there with him doing Legos. If he wants to go throw the ball, I'm going to go throw the ball with him. I mean, that's something I love doing. So anytime he's like down for that, I'm going to do that.
Does he does he build stuff with Legos that like blow your mind?
Not yet.
He will.
He's very much Holy in moly. The like, here's the construction book phase and just like one by one, which is good. Like teaching him how to like read the directions and understand that kind of thing, which is really good. But he hasn't started into like building his own yet.
Cars and hover cars and airplanes. And like a little while ago, my kids started bringing me things that they built without the instruction book, and I was like, "Are you a genius?"
Right.
Like, yeah, it'll blow your mind. Like, it'll make you such a proud father.
Oh yeah.
Like when Levi brought me his first like helicopter thing, and it was like, oh my goodness, you did this like from your brain, and you're like 6. I was like swelling with pride.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't know, these dumb little Legos, but they're just so creative, and like it's really important to like cultivate that if you can.
Yeah.
And also like Legos are a good conduit for dads because they're not boring.
Right.
Like I can get down there and build with them, and I actually enjoy that.
Yeah.
Versus like, or going out and throwing ball as long as they can throw a ball too. If they've not, it's like, can you just get me the ball? But like, like it's not easy to like spend time with your kids sometimes because when they're young, like a lot of that stuff is like a labor of love sometimes.
Yeah.
But like, Legos, that's an easy win for dads.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, he'll blow your mind.
I got girls though too, so I play dolls and do all that stuff from time to time. So
yeah. Something interesting about you is that you went on a motorcycle trip for like an insane amount of miles, continents.
Kind of unbelievable, really.
Not quite continents.
Pretty close.
It would have been continents, but it didn't quite happen.
Yeah. At least across the continents a few times.
Yeah. Been across like North America, Central America. Great experiences. First trip down to Panama, all the way through Central America, back up in the west coast of the U.S. From Washington back across.
You did cross country, didn't you? Didn't you do cross country too?
Whole way across country, and then second trip went all the way to California, up the west coast again, Alaska, back down, back across the U.S.
You must really love riding.
I did at that time. Yeah. I still do now. It's just different, right? Like now I'm in the phase where I just get the bike out, I ride, 3 miles to work, shut the bike down, and it's just different. Mm-hmm. I feel like part of my personality, and I don't know if it's a personality thing, maybe more of just a preference. I do look kind of like the type 2 type of fun, which is kind of like, sometimes when you're in the moment, it's kind of sucky, which that's in a way the long miles on the motorcycle, like it's just taxing on your body.
I don't get it. I don't know how you did it.
Long miles. I did the Iron Butt Challenge, which is, for those that don't know, it's 1,000 miles in 24 hours. Did it twice.
1,000 miles.
Once on the first trip, once on the second trip. Most I ever did was right around like 1,100 miles in a single day. And just did it just because I wanted to do it, So it's just like pretty cool. Self-inflicted,
some people like
stressful situation.
Yeah, some people like exercise, and some people do the iron butt.
Yeah,
like some people like exercise, some people do what you did.
Like Spartan runs and like CrossFit challenges, and like you do the iron butt.
Yeah.
We do the other stuff too, actually. Like you do it all.
I used to. I to be honest, I don't do as much CrossFit as I used to. I still should. I do like it. It's just the time commitment to it right now is tougher to fix in. So I fit it in when I can.
Yeah. So did you do all of those on the same motorcycle? Was it the KLR? Or?
Yeah, KLR 650. Yeah, 2008. Conveniently, I don't know. Maybe I didn't do my research up front. Got the oil burner. 2008 was a transition year. 07 was the first generation. 08 was second generation. Kawasaki in 08 and 09 had piston ring issues. So my bike now burns an insane amount of oil. Yeah. I still have not rebuilt the top end on it. Need to do that.
Was that a problem on these highway miles, the long highway miles?
It was, yeah. You could pretty much ride at 70 miles an hour. If you were going over 70 miles an hour, you're burning oil at a significantly higher rate.
That's not so bad.
I always had a couple quarts of oil in my pannier on the side of the bike, and so it was just kind of like a daily thing. You just get up, check the oil. If it needs it, add a little bit and keep going. And that's Tyler Zaire, who was also on the trip, Tyler and Isaac Zaire, which you would know from the Potsdam.
Gotta get them. We should have had them on too.
Yeah, they'd be great guys to have on here.
Yeah.
They all, Isaac had an '07, so he had a first generation bike. So his didn't burn a whole lot of oil unless we were running at really high RPMs. Where Tyler and I, we both had to kind of watch it.
He had a newer one too.
Yeah, he had an '09.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember you guys had those in the apartment, like working on them before the trip, like the bike in the living room, whatever you were doing.
Dude, it was, those days were great. Like I don't know if I've ever made such of like spur of the moment decision that like I'm all in on something, like usually I'm like contemplating it for days. Like we talked about it in the living room that one night and then it was like, oh yeah, we're doing it. And then like a week later we're all buying bikes and working on them, bringing them in the house in January, February. And,
Okay. So bring me back. So you and two buddies decide we're going to take this crazy long trip all the way across the US and down into Mexico.
Well, it was kind of a developing plan. Like originally, it was kind of Tyler's vision. So I would have been 22, 23.
Was it at graduation?
Yeah,
22.
Okay, so pre-kids, pre-relationship. Yeah, kind of hard to have those.
2016 was when I graduated from college, like spring of 2016. So this would have been like winter of 2016.
Oh.
And
that makes sense. I was gone.
So you were done because you had finished up in
like I went
December.
and got a normal job and like did the normal thing.
How dare you?
The responsible thing. Like, I'm actually going to use my education for
way
something.
lamer
like,
thing.
You know what? Tangent about that. Like if I only have girls right now, but like when my kids get older and they're done with high school, I don't know if I'm going to be like, yeah, you got to get right to college or you got to get right into a job. I might be like, just take a little bit of money and go and do something. I wish I would have, basically is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And honestly, for me,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm really thankful for the opportunity to go and do it. Like, I was fortunate enough to go through college and have very minimal debt coming out of it. So I didn't have this huge burden on me that, like, hey, I got to get, put my hand to the plow here in a hurry or else I'm going to be in a hard way. So, just good timing and blessed to have friends that wanted to do it too. And really, I think Tyler kind of had, the initial idea and vision. They had been involved in the Spanish church here in the Lowville area. And so knew people in Central America through that, like migrant workers that had, from Mexico, Guatemala, that they would, had created relationships with and wanted to go visit them, see how they were doing. They had actually traveled, I think maybe it was Tyler that traveled down there once before to visit one of the guys who had been up here working from Mexico, went back down, kind of started a church plant down there. So there was some motives there for the route that we chose to take.
And for those who don't know,
it was like
we're in New York. So we're not in Texas. We're not in Arizona. Right. Yeah. We're as far away as you can get from Mexico, pretty much.
Yeah, the first trip totaled in at around like 18,000 miles. I think I put on that bike that first trip.
Out of here.
Yeah.
What did the bike have when you bought it? Do you know?
Had right around 8,000 when I bought it, and I think I'm somewhere in like the 54 to 56 range now. The odometer doesn't work anymore.
He was like, I'm done.
That went out on my way to Alaska, and so I like tracked miles on my phone for the rest of that trip, and then tried to repair essentially a piece of the front wheel. The hub is like chipped out and broken out, so like the cable that runs the odometer doesn't even mesh up and work anymore. So
So
but anyway, that whole trip, so we were essentially in the living room talking about, hey, we should do some fun adventure after, I'm done with school and we've got this free time. And really neat enough, like Tyler was doing radiology and Isaac was kind of doing construction, and they were kind of both at points in their lives where they were like, we think, maybe it's time to do something else. And so it kind of was like a perfect timing for all of us. So Tyler was really like, I think the researcher, mainly because he'd be like on call, like at the hospital or whatever. And if it was a slow night, he's just like in the radiology department, like on Adventure Rider forums and doing all this stuff, like researching bikes, like what bikes we should buy. And he was the one that was like, oh, hey, the KLR is the one. And as I got into it more, like, huge following of the KLR. It's like pretty much the budget entry level bike into the adventure biking world. So for a bunch of, broke college guys, it was the perfect fit. We all bought them, and started riding as soon as we could, which it was still icy and snowy in Potsdam. So we're like doing all the modifications.
To prepare for Mexico.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
all the ice and
training in New York for preparing for the desert.
Down
right?
in Mexico, you're like, this is a lot less ice and snow than I thought there would be.
Yeah, so doing a lot of metal fabrication, putting on all the crash bars, all the panniers, modifying our dashes so we had like charging places to mount our phones, like GPS.
Did you put the cruise control feature on your bike, or did it come like that?
Yeah,
so smart.
We all did.
That's amazing. Yeah,
throttle locks, man. Which
throttle
not the
locks.
safest thing. Some of the cruiser bikes nowadays all have them, come standard with them. But it's like as soon as you touch the brake, it comes off. Where with the ones we had, it was literally like a clamp. So you like twist the throttle, clamp it down.
So that's how fast you're going.
You can get on the brakes, but it's like the bike's still going to be trying to go. Yeah. So
not safe at all.
Not safe.
You needed something like oh man,
dude, it was crazy. Like we were. Yeah, it wasn't uncommon to do like 400 miles in a day.
Just around here.
No,
or
like once we were on the trip.
Right.
And because it would vary. Like we would end up, traveling for a couple days, stop and see somebody we knew, be there for a day or two. Then we're like, oh, we kind of got to make up some time here. So then we'd be, hammered down for a couple days, put on like 800 miles or something. And I remember the one day in Texas, we actually got down to Corpus Christi, decided we were going to go over to San Antonio just to like see the Alamo, and just because, and it's like, honestly, I don't even know, probably like a 4-hour ride or something over there. Anyway, we would always see how far we could ride without touching the handlebars kind of thing. And Isaac and I both did it for like 25-mile stretch.
Yep.
In that one go. We're just on this flat open highway in Texas. And we're like running at like 70, 75 because we don't really want to run the bikes harder than that. And like literally just like oil guys working the rigs are like flying by in their work trucks doing like 100, 105, just and we're just sitting there like hands on our laps, just sitting on our bikes.
Oh, we got to make sure your mom does not listen to this.
Yeah.
She's heard some of the stories, but this may not be the greatest thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, really like so thankful for the Lord's protection over us on that trip. Like a lot of close calls for sure.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, really?
Yeah.
Let's get into that. Yeah. Well, first, before we go into the close calls, how did you pick the route? Like you were in New York.
Yep.
So did you guys go East Coast, then down the South corridor to? Okay.
Yeah. So we kind of started off like Isaac had a sister in Williamsport, so like Pennsylvania, then down to Virginia. Alex Mosier, local guy around here, shout out to him. He had been up at Clarkson when I was up there. He had got a job in Virginia, so kind of like Pennsylvania, Virginia. Stopped see him. Actually went to Washington. Wilbur and Cheeky were there. He was doing training before he went to Israel the first time, I believe. Could be wrong there. But anyway, went and saw them. They actually got us some connections with folks down in Guatemala and El Salvador, which was really sweet.
Yep.
So thankful for that. And then like from there, went over like Tennessee. Justin Mosier, another guy from around here. Don't know if you remember him. He and his wife lived out there, stopped with them, a little family, got to do some of the Nashville stuff. Actually got to stop at CrossFit Mayhem on our way out there.
Nice.
Which was pretty
Say hi to Rich.
I didn't. He was out. He was gone.
Yeah.
Was it Darren, his cousin or whatever?
Yes.
I got to meet him.
Oh, really?
He's
yeah.
goofball. He's fun
awesome.
deal. So that was kind of neat because I was pretty big into CrossFit at the time. And so,
well, what year was this?
That was before they had actually built the new facility. So they were still in like, actually like right in the town of Cookeville at the
like right after he stopped competing individually.
Yeah, that would have been after like his fourth title, which he only has 4, right?
Yeah, he took second place the first year, then fourth.
Kind of right at the tail end of his individual.
Like 2015 or 2016, he was done.
Yeah. So
this was at that barn. Wait.
No, it wasn't the barn. They had the actual box. It was at the box.
Oh yeah, I know.
I didn't know where the barn was. I was going to just roll.
A little weird to show up at Rich's house.
How
you doing? I do CrossFit.
A huge fan.
I'm a big fan. He's like, leave me alone.
Okay. So from there, then we started heading south out of Tennessee. So down into like Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, from Louisiana down into Texas down to Brownville area, we didn't actually cross at the Brownville crossing, crossed at another smaller one just because it'd be easier on our first go. We didn't want to go to a crazy packed out border crossing. That was nerve wracking. That was probably the most stressed out I was the day we were riding from Corpus down to the border. Was just like, oh, this is it. We're going for it. Going to Mexico. And like
the wild South.
Right. Well, and like leading up to it, like Tyler and Isaac had both had some time down there. So they're like, you know, all the concerns people have about, oh, it's like cartel and you're going to get robbed and, you know, the cartel's going to like kidnap you and like all this other stuff. It was just like, it's very much not the way
Mexico
or Guatemala or most of the countries are. Obviously that stuff's very real. So it's like, don't like throw caution to the wind entirely. But it was just, I don't know. I had butterflies in my stomach rolling up to the border the first time. It was just kind of, you know, a little unnerving.
Feel a lot safer in a car than on a motorcycle.
Yeah, probably.
That probably was like a little vulnerable too. Like, yeah.
Well, and it was too, like, we show up there and we have no clue. I mean, Tyler had done a lot of research ahead of time as to what we would need in terms of paperwork for border crossings as we went. Because you have to get temporary registrations for your vehicle, motorcycle, all that kind of stuff. So a bit of a process. So he had an idea of kind of what we needed, but like we're trying to talk in broken Spanish to like Mexican, you know, border patrol agent, and like it took us a while to get through that first one.
You guys look like drug mules, probably.
You probably did.
Totally loaded.
Packed up. Yeah,
you guys are going the wrong way.
Nothing to see
going
here.
the wrong way.
Fentanyl pouring into Mexico from the U.S. Right
on KLRs. So I'd like to did you have to do that at every? Or is that just Mexico? Or at every country?
Yeah, so each country has a little bit different policy on it. Mexico, we actually had to like get a temporary registration, and then they actually held, I want to say it was like a $300 or $400 like hold on your like credit card. But the whole thing is that you had to close out the document. You closed out the document when you left the country, and then you got it back, right?
Okay.
So
you guys got to reset the cameras. We're good.
Oh, you're good. Okay.
Yeah, for like damage to the country in case you know.
Well, it's just because so that people don't like try to like import vehicles or export vehicles without them being taxed, right? Like you can't bring a vehicle from another country into, you know, Mexico or any country really without like most countries have like an import tax of some kind, right?
So they give you
capture that.
Yeah. Did they give you a hard time? Like, were they grumpy about it, or were they just like pretty cool?
No, they were pretty cool about it.
Yeah. Man, borders are nerd. Yeah,
and then they threw him in jail.
We spent the next 5 days trying to get out of prison.
Yeah. No, like it was neat. Like some border crossings, it really just depends on like the staffing there. Like some of the staff were super helpful, and then you go to the next border crossing and we'd be there for like half a day to like get the same documents and stamps on the paper and that kind of thing. So, and then other ones you'd be like through in an hour.
Yeah. Right? So like you nervous going to the Mexican border, the Mexico border, the U.S. Mexico border. Like by the end of the trip where you're like, all right, let's just get this. Like, was it?
Oh yeah. It was just like totally routine at the end and not a big deal at all.
Yeah.
And like rolling, like we didn't like hang around like northern Mexico very long. Like we crossed the border and then we just like punched south. I think it's like Tamaulipas or something is where we went the first night, which is probably like 400 miles down into Mexico or something. So like kind of punched down in pretty far, but yeah, a lot of military checkpoints, a lot of convoys rolling around, like all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Pretty
so it sounds like you kind of had the route planned and then like, you know, major kind of like, we're on the open road. We can kind of do whatever we want. Made a few detours here and there. And that's kind of what it was. Once you got across the border, did the route become more streamlined, or were you still making random stops here and there?
We would still make random stops. So like once we got into Mexico, our first like mission was to get down to like south of Mexico City, a couple hours. This is a city of Martinez, and then there's I can't remember the name of the town anymore. Little town up in the hills where this guy Francisco, who was the one that started the church plant down there. So we stayed with him and his family up in this mountainside, like just like small little like 1-room, 2-room houses, dirt floors, and they hospitality like you wouldn't believe. Just like open up their home, want to share everything with us. And they just farm. They farm on the edge of the mountainside there. They've got like, you know, their mango trees and their orange trees and corn mixed in with it all and bananas and all that kind of stuff. And got to do some spear fishing in the river like down there. It's pretty sweet. So, yeah, just spent probably I don't know, a handful of days, a week with them probably. And then started heading south further into Mexico. Actually went out Yucatan Peninsula, got to see some awesome Mayan ruins and stuff out there, which was really sweet.
Nice.
Rolled through Cancun. That was the only place where we paid a bribe, and it was our fault. We actually did an illegal U-turn, and like cops pulled us over, and we're gonna like hold our licenses and stuff. And they
Tell what happened.
like
Yeah, go
so
ahead.
like if you've
Tell the
ever been to
story.
Cancun, there's kind of like this main like I don't know road that runs kind of down the whole like strip of like hotels and resorts, right? And it's kind of like a boulevard type of deal where there's like trees in the middle, and then like there's like U-turn areas every so often where you can actually turn and come back the other way. Well, we ended up entering one that was like a do not enter, but like we didn't know what the sign meant, so like we ended up whipping around when we weren't supposed to. All of a sudden we get police officer pulls us over, and it's like two guys. They come out, they ask us for our papers and our passports, and right, so we give them all that stuff. So then they're holding like our passports, and they're like, okay, we got to take these. We're going to take these back to the station. You guys got to come in tomorrow and like go, pay the fine or whatever, and then we'll give you your passports back. And we were like, no, we're not giving up our passports, man.
Did you know, like, was any of that true at all, or was they were enticed? They were trying to
in the moment. I don't think they were. Maybe that's their policy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Never actually like
That's
looked
a
into it to
wild
see.
policy.
That is pretty crazy.
It seems wild to me.
Different country, you never know. Maybe they do
Yeah,
that.
you never know.
I
Anyway,
guess.
like we kind of go back and forth with them. Like, okay, like we're really sorry. Didn't realize like this was a thing. Like, not trying to break the law. Like, how can we make this right? And so like Isaac actually was, he was kind of like, how can we work this out here? And so like after like probably 15 minutes of back and forth in broken Spanish, like he and the police officer and his partner, they kind of go off to the side and they're kind of talking to each other. And they come back, and I forget how many pesos it was, but they were like, hey, pay us this much, pay the fine now. It's done.
Yeah, pay the fine.
Pay the fine.
Yeah, air quotes.
And so then we essentially started haggling with them on what the fine amount was. We ended up getting it about cut in half, and we just paid it on the spot and left. So it was pretty steep compared to like what we're normally paying for stuff down there. Like I think it was probably like, I don't know, $15, $20 fine or something like that. So
way better.
Yeah. So anyway,
Seems
that
legit.
That was the only time, because you hear about that stuff all the time, like getting stopped at checkpoints and officers
giving you
wanting
a hard
like
time.
making you pay a bribe to get through, all that kind of stuff. That was the only time in the entire trip.
That's pretty nuts.
Where actually over in like Africa, when I was over there for a bit, when we were in Eldoret to visit Pat, I remember driving with him to Hell's Gate. And there was a couple stops, and it was kind of just like known that you just like pay a little bit, right? It was kind of like
they're like
that
a
kind of thing.
security toll checkpoint.
Which in Mexico and Central America, you would occasionally find like little kids that would like pull a string across the road and want like a peso or something just to get through. Like so they would just hold up people.
Little entrepreneurs.
Yeah, seriously.
Little entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the word I was thinking.
Little stinkers. That's
Getting shaken down by a bunch of 10-year-olds.
successfully. That's
Okay.
That's a different one.
All right. So then after that, you kept going south.
Yeah, punched
all the
south
way.
further, went down. We were actually tried to get into Belize, got turned around there because we didn't actually have the titles for our bikes. That was one of the things that people, like from doing research online, were like, don't take your actual title, take a copy of it in case, it gets lost or something happens and some, local officials trying to hold it and not give it back to you, that kind of thing.
Right.
So, and they wouldn't accept it. They wouldn't accept a photocopy of it. And most of the countries didn't require the title to the bike. You just had to show registration, and then they would have their own document that you filled out. So
Did that make
we actually got turned around at Belize. We'd like left Mexico, did all the closeout paperwork, went and crossed the border. I had to go through customs in Belize, and then they like turned us around there. Then we had to go re-enter into Mexico, do all the same paperwork coming back.
Did that like make it back home? Like, did you guys like have to get your titles sent from home or something? Or because I don't know, I feel like I remember hearing about that.
That was probably a license plate issue. So I lost the license plate down in Costa Rica, and we had to get one shipped down, which yeah, thankful for mom and dad, and maybe I feel like Ethan was even involved in that, going to the DMV for me up here to process a lost plate.
They hopped on their bikes and came down and delivered it.
I'll see you in 10 days.
Just mailed it to the local post office in Monteverde.
Man, so much
Costa
happened.
Rica,
I'm sure so much happened on this trip.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah,
I want to ask you how you lost the license plate, but I also want to know like what happened. How'd you get back into Belize?
Yeah, so we actually didn't get into Belize. That was the one country in Central America that we didn't actually officially
go around. Or?
Yeah, we did. So like, there's like northern Guatemala kind of comes up right next to Belize, underneath Mexico, but there's like no entry points until you get over to like more like central Mexico or like western Mexico. So we ended up driving over the next couple of days there, like, I don't know, 600 miles ish to San Cristobal, like Mexico, and then from there went south.
Pretty big detour.
Yeah.
Pretty big detour.
Yeah.
And so like while we were down there, we don't have cell phone plans, right? And we had downloaded this app. It's called Maps.me, and you can download offline maps. These maps would have roads that would go up to the border. And we're like, oh, yep, there's the closest crossing. Go try it. Nope, just a random dirt lane that leads up to the edge of a river. Guatemala's
the border
on
right on the other side.
And like, there's usually like a boat running back and forth. And someone's like,
gosh,
oh yeah, we can load your boat in here and take you across.
Like,
and we're like, are we really going to, enter Guatemala illegally right now?
Yeah, in a boat.
So then we like kept doing that, and it happened a couple times. One crossing we actually rolled up. It must have been like under construction or something, and so it wasn't active at the time. And they actually had Guatemalan like border patrol there, and we just rolled up, started talking to him. He's like, "Oh yeah, you can come in if you want." And we were like, "No thanks."
We could have taken the boat 400 miles back.
Hold on a second. U-turn turns into we're gonna hold your licenses or a bribe. Guatemala's like, just come in. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Okay,
You can U-turn anywhere you want here. Come on in.
It's good that they're all on the same page with this.
Yeah.
So you ended up getting to somewhere like legal.
Yeah, we ended up crossing into Guatemala, a normal like border crossing. But some really like during that detour kind of, there was one night we ended up getting, like, we didn't have a place to camp. And so there was another app that we would use. It's called iOverlander. Great app. Find free campsites all over the place, all over the U.S., Canada. Yeah. It's like, if you're into overlanding, it's like one of the apps to have. Anyway, we would always look on there to try to find campsites. That was kind of our first thing. And then if we didn't find something on there, we would look for, like a local park or something like that, where we could just camp in a field or talk to somebody and say, hey, can we camp in your field or whatever? Well, that night it was getting dark. We weren't finding anything because it was kind of like mountains of like southern Mexico. And we ended up rolling through this one town. Tyler ended up finding one spot on iOverlander. It was by this river. Ended up being this really nice like campground like place. Paid him a few dollars to stay there that night. We got up the next morning. We rode like half a mile down the road, and like the entire road was just like washed out, like totally washed out down into a canyon. And like we had been riding in like the dark leading up to that. Like had we like gone by that place, like we would have driven off cliff for sure. Like there was like, a few feet on the edge of the road towards like the mountainside that you could get around. So we were able to get around it and keep going that next morning. But it was like, just the Lord's hand, man.
Yeah, I guess.
So there's a lot of that, a lot of washouts, man. That was one of the biggest things that we tried to avoid, was driving after dark. Like, just don't drive in the dark, just because it's so dangerous.
No night traveling.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay, so now, all right.
So punch down into Guatemala.
We're down to Guatemala, yep.
Went down to Lake Atitlan, which is this kind of like massive lake in the middle of volcanoes. There's just like massive volcanoes all around. Really beautiful area. Like, did some touring through there. There's actually one road around the one side of that lake. It's called it's known as the Robbery Road, where like people get held up. You can actually look it up on YouTube, and there are videos of people getting held up at gunpoint on that road. We didn't realize it going into it. We're just like riding our bikes along, and there was a patrol car, like two guys in pickup truck, like police car or whatever, police truck. They roll up and they like flagged us down, stopped us, and they were like trying to tell us like, no, like you should not go on this road. Like, this is dangerous. Like, don't go.
That'll be 5 pesos.
I mean, I feel like you never know, like if they could have been in on it, like just driving, they got a hold of a vehicle, an old police vehicle or something. Like, man, I don't know how you did this. It must have been sketchy.
Yeah. Well, like once you're aware of it, then it's, it's a whole lot more stress. It's like, well, should we go? Should we not? Should we go? Should we not? And we ended up going and we got through fine. But then like.
You decided to go through anyway?
Yeah. We went anyway. Because it was like, so the route we were taking, we were going to this, another guy that Tyler and Isaac had met up here in New York when he was up here working on a farm. His name's Marvin, lives just south of Lake Atitlan, like towards the west coast of Guatemala. And so this was like a good route, like towards his place. Otherwise we were like backtracking a ways,
right?
A lot of extra miles and hours on the bike. So we were like, let's go for it. We'll try it. And like we got through fine. Later, Tyler and Isaac actually ended up going back to the Lake Atitlan area to study Spanish school. And this was after I headed north, because we ended up, once we were headed north, they stayed in Guatemala to do Spanish school. So they had ended up talking to somebody there after the fact who like knew like had friends get robbed on the road and stuff, and they were like, "You seriously went on that? Like, they were so cool." This was like an expat, like English, expat that was like living in the area, teaching English in a school down there, and she was like, "Yeah, you should not."
Either really cool or really crazy.
Yeah. So, from there, went and spent some time with Marvin and his family. Again, just like amazing hospitality, and such like a community culture, right? Like family of I believe it was 4 brothers, and each of them would take a turn coming up to the States working, essentially supporting each of the brothers and their families, right? So grandparents, 4 brothers, each has, wife and kids, and they're all just taking turns 7 years at a time. They're gone for 7 years at a rip.
How can they be here that long? Work visas?
No. They're here illegally.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. They would travel up through Mexico, hire a coyote, cross into Arizona, across the Arizona desert, try to essentially make it to Phoenix, and then from Phoenix, work their way just, by contacts.
So they just wouldn't see their families for 7 years.
Wouldn't see their families for 7 years. Yeah.
Man, I wonder why so long. It's just. No,
part of it's the cost of paying, the coyotes to get up here, kind of recouping that cost. Wow. Then, then supporting the family. It's just like, and for whatever reason, that was the number
once you're in, you probably don't want to be making lots of trips.
No, you're pretty much laying low. Like they had connections at farms up here, and so then they come up work on the farm. They just stay on the farm basically. Yeah. So,
yeah, man.
And like. The whole like illegals crossing the border, like huge issue, right? But after being down there, seeing the conditions that they live in, and like just their desire to want to support their families well and give their families opportunity, and I don't blame them for doing it.
It's kind of the base level, especially for every man, and married couple, is like providing the best you can for your kids and for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. It is sad though. Like you're missing 7 years of your kid's life. Can you imagine?
Yeah, no, I can't.
Not at all.
And now, how many cycles of that did they do? A bunch? Like, was it?
Yeah. So when we had gotten down there, the one brother was actually kind of coming back, and the next one was taking off, and it was his second time going up.
Okay. So because 14 years in between.
Right.
So you're gone 7, you're here 14, you're gone 7,
you're
14. That is insane.
Yeah. But awesome people, man. Just had,
that's sacrifice right there.
Great time with them. Doing all just hiking in there. Like they have just coffee. They were farmers, right? Coffee on the side of the mountain, doing a lot of that kind of stuff. Got to go out, kind of experience that for the first time, which was really neat. How that whole process works of just all the different types of beans, and as you're going up the mountainside, they have different varieties as you go up the mountainside, and the coffee taste changes from elevation to elevation. You probably know all this stuff from the coffee shop, right? Yeah. So really neat to kind of see all that, and then down in the towns, you have a local roaster, right? And they're drying all the beans and doing all that kind of stuff.
And sending them to the PB&J cafe.
Yeah.
Now we get ours green roasted in the United States, baby.
Oh, roger that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I mean that's a huge industry there, but obviously not enough to support. I mean, they're still having to go and work in the U.S. for extra income. 7 years.
Yeah. Crazy.
Were there many children in that family? Like, did they?
Yeah, so they each probably had, I'm trying to think here. Marvin, believe only had 2 kids at the time, but I think his youngest brother maybe only had 1, and then the older 2 brothers had like 3 or 4 each.
Yeah, man, that's crazy.
So
yeah, that's cool. So
yeah,
how's your Spanish these days?
oh, it's terrible. Yeah, as a clarifier, like
you were the other end of the translation. Yes, you were the English side of the translation. That's good. Got to have one of those.
Yeah, it definitely got better throughout the trip. Like I had studied Spanish in high school, but that was like the extent of my Spanish. So like my grammar was terrible, man.
You were like, "Donde está la biblioteca?" And they were like, "What?
Where's the bathroom? Oh, what?
Baño around here?" Yeah.
So Guatemala, and then how far are you away from your destination at that point?
We're like still pretty far north. Yeah. Okay. So from like after we were there with Marvin, we actually traveled down to Antigua, actually just outside Antigua, which is the original capital of Guatemala, not Guatemala City. Right near there, Ciudad Vieja. Maybe have you been to Christian's cousin's place?
Yep.
Yeah, so we stayed with them.
We stayed
for
probably
a few
the
days.
same compound.
Yeah.
Like the little, with
and
the little courtyard.
The Volcano de Agua right there, looking out the back door. Yeah.
Yeah, we climbed one of those bad boys.
Really neat.
Like molten lava just like sliding past you.
Oh, yeah. You probably did Fuego then when you were there.
Okay, so Fuego is the bigger one, right?
Kaya's the bigger one.
Okay, so
Fuego's
we
the
went to
active
Fuego
one.
then. Yeah, we went to Fuego.
Yeah.
And it was moving, and like you could stick a stick in it, and just like
just flares right up.
Insane.
Where were your parents?
Behind me. Like, look at this kid.
Contemplating.
No, we went there, and they took us to El Salvador, so I don't know about their choices for their 10-year-old kids. But
first.
We hiked Pacaya. We actually, like, the night, I want to say, been soon after we left Wilbur and Cheeky's brother's place there.
Okay.
We actually drove to Pacaya, ended up driving up the mountain on our bikes, and kind of got to like where the hike starts, and they like let us camp up there. So we like camped on the side of the mountain that night.
Way.
You've got all the other volcanoes right there.
What a view, probably.
Oh yeah, amazing view. And then you've got like Fuego in the background. It's just like a streak of red running down the mountain. Yeah, it's really sick to look at.
Dude.
Yeah.
When we were going to the top of that, talk about culture shock. There was a gas station maybe like halfway up, or maybe not even that far. Okay. And there was a guy outside standing with a shotgun.
Oh yeah,
guarding the oil or guarding the gas station.
Yeah, every gas station down there.
And we would get passed by like, we were sitting in the back of a truck, and there would be trucks passing us, and like there's guys standing with like rifles, and they're like, I'm like, should we be here?
Yeah,
yeah,
dude.
It's
especially
different.
In Mexico, like all the police are armed like
to a T.
Yeah,
because they have to deal with cartel.
Right. That's very real reality for them. And so you've got tons of trucks, with gun mounted on the back and just guys rolling around like that.
These guys were not cops that I'm talking about. Like holding AKs.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's the thing. So like a lot of like your military down there, a lot of them are using like M4s, that kind of thing. But then like you get to your like local security guy who's like manning the gas station, he's running like a pump shotgun, or he's, got an AK. That's like every gas station down there has a guard or multiple guards. That's like super common, which was one of the reasons, there was a couple times we actually camped like just out back of gas stations, because they're kind of like one of the more secure locations.
Yeah, you kind of have a guard.
Right. There's somebody guarding the location at all times. So, not that he couldn't have turned on us, but
that's true.
Now you're rolling up on him.
Yeah, we were camping in Nicaragua one night, camped at a gas station, and then when we were actually coming back north, decided to camp at the same spot, and guy rolled up and was like, "Oh, you can't stay here. Like, too dangerous to stay here." Just random local guy. He ended up inviting us back to his home, fed us like awesome like chicken dinner. Was like wanted to like give us their beds to sleep in, all this sort of stuff. Like, we ended up sleeping in hammocks out back, and then kind of like he had like this covered yard area, but just like didn't have much, but like just 3 random American guys, and like didn't want anything for it, just like said, "Hey, you guys can't sleep here, you're coming to sleep at my place," and just kind of like just give the shirt off your back kind of mentality. Just
Nicaragua.
Really kind people. Yep.
Okay, so now you're past Guatemala.
Well, yeah, sorry. I'll backtrack. So yeah, Pacaya, started heading south towards El Salvador at that point. That's kind of the next one in line. And met we hadn't really been out to the ocean at all yet at that point.
Okay.
So we were like, hey, we want to get out to the Pacific Ocean, like see the Pacific Ocean. None of us had ever done that. So right before the El Salvador border, we actually head west, and there's kind of like this island or like strip of ground kind of off the coast, and there's like a little road out onto it. Well, we get out there, we kind of like walk on the beach a little bit, see some waves, big waves, and then like we like stopped at like this little like local restaurant or whatever. We're sitting there eating, and this guy just comes over to our table, starts talking to us. Turns out like he's from, right there. His name's Marcos, and he's a fisherman, and he just essentially chats us up kind of later, like, and that was probably later in the day, probably like 3-4 o'clock. So we were like, at that point we were like, do we cross into El Salvador? Do we stay in Guatemala another night? What are we doing? Right. We didn't really have a plan. And long story short, he's like, oh, he like learns about what we're doing. He's like, oh yeah, you got to come back to my house. So like, we're like, okay, sure. And he like invites us over for dinner, and his wife was with him at the time. And she was like, oh yeah, I'll cook you, fish dinner or whatever. So
that's awesome.
We end up going like down this strip of land, and we just roll up to this boat launch, and we're like, what are we doing? And turns out they actually like live off on this like island. Like there's another island off the coast yet, and like they live on this island. It's called Las Lisas, which is a fish. A lisa is a fish. Anyway, they put us on this boat. Like we parked our bikes, which was super nerve wracking. Like pulled like our like waterproof bags with our clothes and tents and stuff off, and we're just gonna like leave our bikes here. But they did have like a security guard guy there kind of watching other vehicles for people that lived on the island. So he's like, oh yeah, it's good. This guy's good. And like, he was talking with a guy explaining the situation. And so like, we
who do you trust?
Like, it's just like, we don't know this guy at all. Like we've literally like talked to him for a half hour. He's inviting us back to his place. Now we're leaving our bikes with his buddy.
It's on an island somewhere.
So, but like, man, like we get over there, and like, it's him and his brother. They're fishermen. They like charter, like they actually have people come from the US, some, and like they charter them on their like little boats, but they're all like these old like long wooden boats with like a little like 10-horse motor on the back. And so like they fed us a wonderful dinner. We camped in like their sandy like yard kind of on the edge of the beach there. Way. It's like, dude, when you think of like beach town like Costa Rica or Guatemala or something like that, it's like, it'd be like the surfers, kind of like a surfer vibe for sure. So it's a pretty cool spot. We ended up getting up in the morning and rolling on, but like,
to make sure your bikes were there.
Yeah, well, and just to get down to El Salvador. So we had, Wilbur and Chiqui had connected us with some folks in El Salvador. Yep. So we kind of had told them, hey, we're going to be here in and around this time. So we kind of had that mission in mind. But before we left, he was like, hey, when you're coming back north, stop in here. I'm going to take you guys fishing. So yeah, that's kind of another story. Headed back north. We end up pulling in there. We get to stay at his house again. And we got up at like 4 a.m, man, and roll out on this like wooden boat. And like, it's kind of like a cove, right, where they got all their boats parked. We load up. He's just got these massive nets in there. We come out of the cove, and we're just like heading towards the break, and it's just like these massive waves coming in, and then we're just like this like skinny boat. Like the boat's probably, I don't know, like this table width and then like another half. Like it's not a very wide boat, super long, right? So like you can't like just take these things head on. Well, he gets in there, like he just times it. Like he's just coming up to it, and then he boom, like guns it in, like gets between the next wave coming in, kind of like turns the boat a little bit, waits till that wave kind of settles, and then like guns it, gets out again. Like he like threading a needle, dude. Like the dude's done it like every day for most of his life fishing. So it was like when we like, I'm like, what are we gonna do here? Like this is gonna turn us over. And he's like, no problem for him. So like we roll out there like a mile or two, just out in the middle of the ocean. You can't see land, nothing. Like you're just out in the middle of the ocean, and like 4:30 in the morning, start dropping nets, and it's probably like 100-yard net at least, like long nets, like just buoy on one end, start dropping it in the water, set the one, take off, drive 100 yards or more, drop the next one. As soon as that one's in the water, you come back, pull it out, it out. Hundreds and hundreds of fish, man, crazy. It's like gill net, so the fish kind of like swim into it, get caught in it, you pull it in, and so like they're kind of, and they're fast, man. Like and we would try to help them. Like they would let us help at certain
Slow
times,
them down.
but they're just like, they're just pulling it in, and as fast as the fish are coming in, they're like, they've got like a whole bunch of different crates in the boat, and they're just like sorting them. They know exactly which ones are good, which ones are no good. And they're just like, you know, anything that doesn't meet limits, they're like throwing back over. And so like they can just tell by looking at it, and they're, yeah. So like they were doing all that. And then they had like these little, it was like just a piece of wood with a bunch of like fishing line tied around it. So then they would bait those with like little like minnows and stuff that they caught off the nets. And then we would throw those in. It's kind of just like to catch bigger fish. But you're like literally like just like fishing line hand over hand. And we caught like a bunch. They're called jacks, which the fish is probably like this long. They fight really, really good.
Okay.
So it's a really neat experience. But we were out there like from like 4 a.m, came back probably like a 12-hour day of just like constantly back and forth, setting nets, pulling nets in, setting nets, pulling nets in.
Wow, that's awesome.
Just a ton of fish when you're
That's
all
a
done.
long day.
It is a really long day.
Yeah, you must have been
and dude,
tired.
like it's rollers out there. Like Isaac was like seasick the entire time.
Oh, that's
just
miserable.
like puking over and over again. It got to the point at the end of the day, like he hasn't got nothing in his stomach left to like you know, throw up, and so he's just like dry heaving over and over, and it's just like, man. I felt so bad for him because he like literally like laid like curled up in the bow of the boat for most of the day. Tyler got sick a little bit. I don't know how I didn't get sick.
You're worried about living, must be too much.
So one of us has to stay like alert.
Anyway, like we were whooped after that day, man. That's hard work.
Those guys like do it every day.
Do it every day. So like we get back, we go to there's like a fish market, right? So we roll up with all our fish, and they like sort it out, and then got paid, and then they like treated us to like a shrimp like feast after that night with like him and his family there. So it was like, it was great. And then we rolled out the next morning. Like we kind of got up at the same time they did, because they were headed out to fish again 4 a.m. You know, they're up before the sun.
And that's just life.
That's just their life. Yeah.
Jeez. Okay, so we're in El Salvador. So when we come back from the break, we'll continue with that. I want to ask you also about you said you have a lot of close calls.
Yeah.
Get into that.
Yeah, we got a few of those.
And then a little bit bigger picture off topic of this, just some life stuff.
Yeah.
Sound good?
For sure.
All right, be back, everybody. And we're back. That's right, baby. We'll be known for something, our transitions. That's it. All right, so when we left off, you were talking El Salvador. You have now made it from New York to El Salvador.
Yeah, we made it into El Salvador.
Everywhere in between.
So as soon as we got into El Salvador, I think like basically went straight to Najapa, which is just east of San Salvador, which is the capital. And the reason for going there was a couple, Bobby and Brittany Hibbs, that Wilbur and Cheeky knew from their time down in Guatemala.
Right.
So that was a connection that, you know, from early in the trip when we had spent time with Wilbur and Cheeky, they had kind of connected us at that point with them, like over Facebook Messenger. And so then we were like, hey, we're going to stop in and see you guys. And they had moved down there. They're from Ohio originally. Moved down there, started a youth ministry down there. There's in Najapa, I think it's Najapa and Apopa at that time, or a little bit before then, was like maybe like murder capital of the world, something like that. Like tons of gang stuff going on down there, like MS-13, like a bunch of the other big time gangs. So a lot of the youth in the area kind of get caught up in those gangs very early on. So they felt called to go there, started this youth ministry where a couple nights a week they've got, you know, kind of just like a youth service. And then like as it's evolved, they've now just purchased some land, and they're actually trying to like develop that where they'll have like more of like a youth like ministry center and that kind of thing, because they've been like renting a space for a long time. But they've got like education programs now, like athletic programs. They've got a bunch of stuff going on, but just like awesome people like opened their home to us, and we stayed there for at least a week the first time, and then maybe another week on the way back north. Just awesome people. Got to go be involved with like their youth services and stuff, and get to know a bunch of the kids, and really good food down there. They've got these things down there called pupusas.
Oh yeah,
which is, I don't know, maybe you've had them.
Yeah.
It's just like two tortillas almost, like just packed with like cheese and meat and beans in the middle.
Yes,
I ate way too many of those, man. And like this one place we went, Bobby took us there. He was like, "Oh yeah, this is the spot," right? So we roll up, and it's just like, 6 vendors and like these outdoor picnic tables, and they're all selling pupusas, and they've all got like different varieties or whatever.
Oh yeah.
So we're just like, smorgasbord, right?
Yep.
So we're just like housing these, and they've got like all these like pickled peppers and all this stuff like just sitting out on the table, like 95 degree, like cesspool of like peppers on the table or whatever. No, that was a bad way to say it, but because it was really good. Like we're trying it, it's like, they're good. Yeah. Great. Like we're eating, man. Like we paid for it. Oh. The day's fine. We're not getting
gringos. Can't handle.
Look at those guys. They're actually eating the peppers off the table.
Yeah, dude, nobody does that.
Like behind Mexico was rough too. Like that cleaned us out pretty good. Like some of the hot food and like just like bacteria like we've never been exposed to, right? So yeah, that was a little rough.
Jeez.
But some kind of close calls down there, too. The one day we were going up to look at a volcano just locally there, and it was me. I'm trying to remember if I think I had one of the teenager boys from the mission was on the back with me. Tyler had another one on the back with him. I can't remember their names. I wish I could.
This is in El Salvador still?
This is in El Salvador. Bobby was on the back of Isaac's bike. So we're all riding 2 up, and we're headed up this, side of this volcano. So, like, switchbacky road, right? Dog laying on the side of the road. Like, there's just stray dogs all over the place down there. Right. Pretty common. And this dog is, like, laying in the road. Well, we're coming up, and this truck's coming down. And this dog's, like, laying in the lane where this truck's coming down. Dog realizes truck's coming, jumps up from its sleep, runs across. Isaac was first. He goes through. Dog comes across in front of me, and we're riding staggered, right? Goes right in front of Tyler. Tyler hits the dog, and it just, like, lays the bike over right there. He was, like, road rash all up and down his arm.
How fast are you guys going?
I don't know, probably like 40, somewhere in there. We weren't going crazy fast, but fast enough. And skinned him up real bad. The kid that was on the back with him got like skinned up on his arm pretty good.
That must have been scary for him.
Turned around, ended up getting like Tyler's wrist, and I don't know if his wrist, I'm pretty sure it was just his wrist. Maybe his elbow too. Like super swollen for like days after that. We ended up getting x-ray down there. Awesome. $20 in and out.
$20 x-rays. Why?
Healthcare, south of the border.
Thank the Lord, no broken bones, nothing like that.
How much does an x-ray cost here?
I don't know, man. Thousands at least.
What?
Yeah. That's like,
It's a business.
Yeah. So.
Was he like nothing broken?
Nothing broken. Yeah.
$20.
So just a lot of bandages, replacing bandages for a while, but that was one of the close calls for sure.
Yeah, that must have
and that was like one of the first times coming down off that volcano. We got some serious brake fade on the bike. So like your brakes, like when you have 2 people on the bike, that's meant for like 1 200-pound person, and then you've got like our pannier racks, most of our gear. That day we probably didn't have all the gear on the bikes because we would have left some of it at their house. But like definitely overloaded suspension, overloaded bike, coming down very steep incline, switchbacks type of stuff. I remember brakes were cooked. Like I got to the point where I had no rear brake, like just hit the pedal and just like nothing. And then the front just like, we're just like keeping it in low gear the whole way down, just like second gear.
Yeah, those
like
roads aren't
nursing it down because you don't want to lose it on those roads because it's like one side you're off a cliff and it's no good.
God.
When we were on our honeymoon, we went to St. Lucia.
Yep.
And from our resort was on the other end of the island from where the airport was. Yep. So we had to take a little van. Bro, you want to talk about roads? Sketchy? Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, those switchback roads down mountains like this. And those guys do not slow down very much. They're like,
down.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. We're like, I hope we get there.
In the back of the van.
Yeah, no, for real. Yeah, it's like a cartoon. They're good at that, thankfully.
Yeah, 18,000 miles. How many sets of pads? Like you must have ran through brakes.
Yeah, I went through I think 2 or 3 sets on the trip.
Okay.
And we had packed those along. So that was one of the things, again, thinking ahead, Tyler had kind of done a lot of research, like getting parts down there. Not impossible, right? Kawasaki's pretty worldwide.
There's not a lot of AutoZones down there.
Not really.
Not on the Volcano mountain. No.
I
bet there was a Family Dollar
a
though.
Story from Costa Rica where we actually did have to get some parts in that.
Was there a Family Dollar though? I bet there was.
One every 5 miles still. Yeah. So you packed your brakes. That
so
was
we had
good
extra
prep.
brake pads. We had extra chains and sprockets. We had an extra set of tires. So that was one of the things. We bought tires, and I think we picked them up in Corpus Christi or somewhere close to the border. We had them shipped so in Corpus Christi, I mentioned that earlier. There's Andrew Jansen, I think is his name. Somebody Megan Harney knew from her time in Colorado Springs. He lived down there. Paul Duke, a guy that they rented a house together, he was an architect down there. And he's actually the one that connected me with EMI, which I ended up interning with them in Africa later. So he was the first, kind of introduction there. So really cool guys. I think we had that stuff shipped to their house, picked it all up, packed it all on the bike. So we were loaded. And then kind of as we needed to replace stuff further down the line.
Yeah. We had to pack a lot.
Yeah. Yep.
Like you were hauling two tires with you.
Yeah. Front and rear.
Jeez.
Yep.
Yeah. The logistics are kind of important. And you have to be always checking those.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be coming down a mountain with no brakes.
Yeah, and that was kind of, after a while, it just becomes routine. Like every day, you're kind of like checking chain tension, lubing the chain on the bike, you're checking oil. You're
daily maintenance.
It just becomes routine because I mean, even when we were still in the States, we were having, a puncture here or something, and we'd puncture a tire. So we all had extra tubes. We'd have like the extra heavy walled tubes, and then we'd have patch kits. So like puncture a tire, pull off to the side of the road. We learned that our panniers, like we could, unbolt those from the side of the bike, and those worked great as center stands. So we'd set those on the ground, jack the bike up, put it up on that,
nice,
pull the wheels, tire irons.
It's very ingenuitive of you,
Take the
Mr.
tire.
Engineer.
How'd you figure
Mr. Engineer's like, I can just put my bike on this saddlebag.
It took us a little bit. I remember like one of the first times we were kind of like on the side of the road, and we just had this big boulder, and we're like trying to balance Isaac's bikes, and then we're like digging out like the ground so that we can like get the tire off, and then a couple days later we had another flat, and we were like, oh, we can just use the pannier and put the pannier under it. So
that moment, like
trial and error,
digging out the ground and trying to get the tire off the ground that way, that would have been a moment where I'd be like, oh, man, I could be home right now.
Dude,
there's been a few of those that he's been saying that, but it's a lot better here.
Yeah. Man, when we first started out, when we were going down from Pennsylvania into Virginia, we were riding the Blue Ridge, and we got soaked.
Blue Ridge Parkway?
Yeah, Blue Ridge Parkway. Beautiful area, right?
Isn't that?
But we were like, it's going to be great. It's going to be fun.
Like a bikers. Everybody loves that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Really cool. But it was literally like fog and rain for like 2-3 days straight that we were kind of in that area. And it's just like you're tenting in it. You're packing up wet. You're riding in the rain. You're soaked. You're trying to dry out what you can here and there, and it's just like
this was early on in the trip. You were like,
this is early in the trip, and you're like at that point, like that would have been May, so cold, cloudy day, maybe in the 60s, 50, high 50s, mid 60s, and you're like soaked to the bone, riding. Like you get chilled really 30. Fast. You're freezing. That was one of the things on the Alaska trip, man. I froze so much. I got a little frostbite in my toes from that.
Nuts,
but anyway,
you went from equator to like Arctic Circle.
And then that was fun.
Yeah.
You second guess yourself in the moment a little bit, but
it's like challenging yourself and doing hard stuff. That's it right there.
So
totally is worth it. All right. Anyway,
so all the spare parts, took all those with us. So anyway. Super neat time in El Salvador with Bobby and Brittany. They just seeing their faith and obedience to answer the Lord's call, and just like all the challenges that have come with that. Just like, whether it's youth getting murdered and killed and dumped in a ditch, and having to help be part of that process and helping families grieve, and just all that stuff. It's just really heavy stuff. Anyway, just amazing people. And I would think the whole trip as a whole, I think the Lord kind of, just showed me a lot, revealed a lot to me, increased my faith in a lot of ways. And so that was the whole trip really had a lot of that. But yeah, from San Salvador way, we started heading south, went down through Honduras and then into Nicaragua. Didn't really do a whole lot in Honduras because we were on the western side of Central America, and so Honduras kind of tapers down there, so it's a really kind of short portion of the country.
Yep.
And we didn't really have a whole lot of connections there, so we just made a few
kept trucking,
leisurely stops, kept trucking. Got into Nicaragua. Tyler had looked up this one location. It's this volcano. It's called Cerro Negro, and it's just this like old non-active volcano of just like volcanic rock, and there's like dunes all around it and stuff. So we were like, oh, hey, we'll go check this out. You can like rent like a board and like slide down it and stuff.
Okay.
So we end up getting there, pulled into a gas station in the close town nearby. We're filling up. This other white guy just rolls up on like a 250 dirt bike and starts filling up. We're like, oh, hey, like, who's this guy? We're going to talk to this guy. Like,
no English.
And so we get to talk. His name's Ryan. And long story short, he was down there at a local like church plant in that town. And a few of the people there were actually from like Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, like knew
no kidding
my uncle and some of my cousins. So
Dang.
like really small world situation. Spent a couple nights with them. They kind of had like just like this little house in the town that they were living in, him and a couple of his buddies that were on the mission there.
That's
and
nuts.
They ended up taking us out to the volcano and all these dunes, and we were just like ripping dunes on the bikes, man. It was a lot of fun, like trying to ride our bikes up the side of like this like volcano. It was sweet. It was a lot of fun. I ended up breaking a chain out there on my bike. Just like coming over a dune, a lot of weight.
Maybe don't do that.
Wham! Like broke the chain, and
your only lifeline.
That was yeah, man. That was not smart too, because like at that point I didn't really have like a case saver on the bike, so the chain came around, slapped the case on the bike, and like started a crack, and I ended up throwing a chain like on my Alaska trip, and then I actually had to like clean it up and JB weld it to like keep it from like leaking oil and stuff. So that was kind of like the start of a problem later on. But anyway, I got it like, yeah, it was just good times with those guys.
Cool.
And from there down into Costa Rica. We were there for a while. So we didn't have plans to stay there for a long time. We kind of went to like along the coast for a bit. Went to some of the cool beaches down there for, a day. Then we went up into the mountains. There's this town, it's called Monteverde, and there's just like a ton of like neat, like kind of like rainforest stuff up there. And so we camped up there for a few days. Well, there was a bunch of like single track trails, kind of like these, like you can get out in like the bush, kind of like on these mountainsides, like crazy like ravines and like all this single track on motorcycles. And we're taking our KLRs in there, so like 400 plus pound bikes that we should be riding these trails with like a dirt bike, right? So it was just like literally like the one day we went out, and this was during the time, so I had lost a license plate as we were, I believe, riding into that town, and we didn't realize it till the next day. We ended up like riding up and down that road over and over again trying to find where this license plate fell off, because like the bolts were still there, like in like I had like nylock nuts on it, like it was probably like bolted on, and somehow either my license plate was stolen or it just fell off somehow. Lost the license plate. So as I'm getting a new one shipped down, like we can't really like keep traveling around. So we were kind of staying in that local area. So we were like, oh, hey, we're going to go off and explore these trails. There was one day we were pretty much out all day long, just like, walking our bikes like up these like crazy ravines over all these rocks, like crazy muddy streams, and like it was insane. It was taxing, but it was a blast, man. I look back and it was just like I'd do it all over again. So I went bungee jumping for the first time up there. They had a little like zip lining park and like bungee jumping up there. I think it was like
bungee jumping in Costa Rica.
Yeah. Seems a little risky.
Yeah, probably not going to be there with you. Next time you go, just
yeah.
Was it legit?
Yeah, it was legit. Yeah, they had a good setup.
Well, he's still here.
It was kind of like this cable car. They like take you out over this canyon, and I want to say it was.
Actually, I passed away there.
Yeah, like you probably did. You like check around to make sure it was legit, or did you just send it?
Yeah, so like you could read, like we had Wi-Fi. Like there's like a lot of like some cafes in that town, so we would like roll up to the cafes most days and like get on the Wi-Fi for a little bit and like
check in with everybody.
Check in.
That
was kind of like our thing. Like we try to find free Wi-Fi, man. So the whole trip, you're always like scouting spots that have free Wi-Fi. Roll up and try to, connect.
Cop some.
So anyway, we read reviews and all really good things. And I think like it was actually kind of pricey. I want to say like I probably paid like, I don't know, somewhere between like $50 and $75 to do that, which was kind of steep for down
Costa
there.
Rica, for sure.
And it was like, I think it was 450 foot drop. So
did you get like
free fall?
Was the guy in front of you paying the same rate, or was it like, oh, this guy's from America? Like,
everybody's paying the same rate. Like it was very much just like you rolled in there, and it was kind of like a professional, like spot where they like.
Have you seen the guy in the chair when they're like tipping him over? He's like, let me tell you something.
No.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. I love that. Dude, and then somebody's like, love him. That's my favorite.
There was like, so it was like, I want to say it was like, there was me and then like this other couple that were out on the thing. And like the dude's like girlfriend or wife or whatever, she did not want to go. She was pretty nervous about it. And it took like a number of times till they convinced her to jump off.
She did it.
She did it.
And then what'd she say? Did you see her after? She was like,
she
never
was
again.
It. Yeah, totally loved it.
That's how those things are. They're like, I'm never doing it. And then you do it once, you're like, I'm doing it again.
I was like,
what is that
about? I'll go. Jump first. But
on that same note, do you ever see the guy that does like that roller coaster ride that's like high suspension, and like right before he hits the thing to drop him, like free fall, he's always like, oh, just a second, I forgot to...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, your shoulder strap.
There's a special place for that guy. I mean, no. I wonder if they have like a brand new like trouser store at the bottom. That's just good marketing right there. Actually, I own a pants store at the bottom too.
Did you do that pretty easily, or was that like?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I kind of enjoy that.
It's like, yeah, me too. I totally would too.
I'd be like that lady.
It's honestly like cliff jumping. Like,
let me show you.
When you do like cliff jumping in the water, it's like,
how high is the cliff? Because it might be the same for me. Oh, it's like cliff jumping. That makes it so much easier.
You just gotta commit.
Skydiving.
Just gotta send it.
Great.
Yeah, so that must have been
so like
blast.
that was really cool. That area, there was a number of volcanoes around there, a lot of volcanic lakes, like hot springs, all that kind of stuff. So while it was kind of nice to be like laid up for like a week and a half.
Like a vacation in Costa Rica.
Right. Yeah. You kind of got a vacation in Costa Rica. We were just camping. We like this one guy, he was an expat from the U.S. living down there, had like this little like health food store, kind of like a hippie type of guy, and he let us like camp out back of, like, he just had a little yard space behind his store, and he was like, yeah, you guys can camp here. So we camped there for a handful of days. Then we kind of went off, found a couple other camping spots, like asked a few people to camp in their fields or whatever, and beautiful area, man, just like really neat. From there, headed south again, and then we were down into Panama at that point. So then it was like hammer down, got down to Panama City, saw the Panama Canal. Pretty sweet, dude. Just amazing.
Massive engineering feat.
Massive.
Yeah, you're probably just sitting there like
drooling.
Dude, the lock system, I was just like, whoa, this is sweet. Just like the sheer size of the ships coming through there, the amount of cargo, all like the tugboats, man. Just like,
how long is that canal?
I don't know off the top of my head. It's a significant run though.
Yeah.
Like, man, it'd be interesting.
It might be one of the 7 man-made wonders. It might be one of them.
Yep, I think so.
So
that was really neat. And then from there, kept heading south, right? Because like Panama City, like there's still a significant like amount of Panama left after Panama City. So I don't know, it was a day or two. We rode down to the very bottom of Panama, and that's kind of like the end of the road, man.
So why did you stop there instead of like, all right, let's just like get a day into South America to say you did it? Was there a reason why?
Yeah, so World War II era, the plan was to build a highway that essentially ran all the way from the U.S. down into Central America, so that, should the war have come over here, we would have had access, right? We could have moved materials and supplies, wherever we needed.
And every day thereafter.
That road got stopped in Panama. Essentially, I believe it's 60 miles from the end of the road in Panama to the Colombian border, and then from the Colombian border to like the closest town or road is another maybe 20 or something. It's like 80 to 100 mile gap there where it's just all jungle. nowadays, and even then, like heavily controlled by the cartel, right? In like Colombia, right? And a lot of human trafficking through
so
there.
I'm assuming like it's a pretty easy place to
control. Yeah, a lot of migrants that can get into South America, then come up through there.
And the topography, man, hard to get through those forests.
Oh yeah, dude, so dense. There are a few guys who have like done it on motorcycles where they like take their motorcycle into the jungle, they hire locals, and like they like float the bikes on boats, then get off, ride the bikes, try to like bushwhack, and just like insane, man. There's some books out there on it, but we were like, we're gonna go as far as we can, and early on, we were like, we'll kind of see like how much money we have at that point, because you can like charter your bike, like you can hire somebody like a sailboat or whatever, and to take you to Cartagena, which is on the north side of Colombia, and continue on from there. But once we got down there, we didn't really have the finances to do it. It was like 1,000 or 1,500 a person.
Yeah,
and at that point, like, I don't know. I think when I left on the trip, I probably had somewhere in the $4,000 to $5,000 to my name at that point. So it was not a whole lot, and not
really
we were
practical.
Like, needed something to get back.
Because the idea was like we go and we end up selling the bikes to get home. Was kind of the idea. It was like
and then
that was pretty
home.
much the only way we were gonna be able to
make it back.
Finance coming back, unless just call our parents.
Cash on a plane
like, hey.
or something? Or?
Yeah, just like sell the bikes, fly home kind of thing. That was a thought at one point. But yeah, decided to turn around, start heading north. So and a whole bunch of adventures coming back north, man.
I can imagine. But a lot of the same stops, like Nicaragua for the...
Yeah, so Nicaragua, we kind of like back up through Costa Rica and Nicaragua, we kind of took a different track. Got to see some really cool like banana plantations in Costa Rica on the eastern side. Just like amazing industry, man. Just like they would actually have like roadblocks where they would actually have like this trolley system that they would like lower over the road, and it was just like banana fields for as long as wide, as far as you can see on one side of the road, and this packing plant on the other side. Yeah. And they would actually have like bundles of bananas like coming across in this trolley system into this packing plant, wash them, cut them in the bunch you see in the store, pack them in the box, load them on the containers, and take them over to the port, put them on boats, get them,
somebody's a go-getter. That's that's an entrepreneur for sure.
Really neat. Really neat to see that kind of stuff. A little bit different track coming north. Spent some time with Ryan, the guy we had met in Nicaragua again on our way north. Stopped with Bobby and Brittany again, and then went fishing with the guys with Marcos. That was, which we talked about earlier. And then Isaac and Tyler went to Lake Atitlan to a Spanish school there.
Okay.
They stayed there. That's kind of where we parted ways at that point. Reason for that, Mom and Dad and Jason were going to be in Michigan like end of August. So we had left in May, and this was early August, I want to say, when I started heading north again. So I left in Guatemala, and in hindsight, Mom like hated the fact that I was by myself. But I essentially went solo, like
through Mexico,
up through Guatemala into Mexico. But I was like hammered down. I didn't really stop at all. Like I had the first day, went up to Mexico, crossed the border. I think it was either San Cristobal. There's another city not too far up there. I ended up getting like a room in a hostel for, I don't know, like $10 or something. And then the next day, hammer down to Tamaulipas, which is on the eastern side of Mexico. And then from there, back up into Texas, went back up into Corpus Christi, stayed with Paul and Andrew again for a couple days. Then saw a friend in Abilene, Texas, and then went west. So part of that whole thing was once I was back in the States.
It seems like you were about to go
west. Yeah. So I was like, man, I'm going to go out west, because I had some friends from Summit, which was a camp I did in Colorado growing up, and had some friends on the West Coast. So went up the West Coast, saw a bunch of them, saw some college friends out there. One guy that was working for Boeing, stayed with him. And
he doesn't work on the doors, does he?
No.
Okay, good.
So lots of fun, dude. Like, got to go to like Yosemite, like
all the
do a bunch of
stops
hiking out there, a bunch
California,
like riding, the
Santa
PCH
Monica.
out there, like beautiful, man. Just like so much cool stuff to see out there.
Yep.
And then like Crater Lake, a bunch of like waterfalls and stuff in Oregon as well.
And then, so you're at the top now, pretty much.
Yeah.
So you get up
all
into
the way
Washington,
up the West Coast.
and then were you planning to go to Alaska at that point, or were you
Well,
planning?
so that was one of the things we had talked about as a group too. Like, hey, do we want to punch up to Alaska on this
That's
trip?
such a random. Yeah, let's just.
This is like the entire North American continent. You guys are like,
Yeah.
this is a
It's not just
massive
a
amount of
distance,
miles.
You know, it's only a few inches on the map, right? No.
Yeah. I guess that's
insane.
one way to look at it.
Well, so like as like we learned more about like the adventure motorcycling community, one of like the classic routes is as far as you can drive in Alaska, all the way to the southern tip of South America. So you go from Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, you're on the edge of the Arctic Ocean, and you go all the way down to tip of Argentina, in Ushuaia down there. So that's like one of the classic routes.
Oh, but how do you get your bike from Panama?
Well, so you would sail. You'd charter a boat, load it on a boat, sail it down to Colombia,
Down
and
to
from Colombia
Central.
you start
Okay.
working your way down, down through.
Yeah, okay.
So when I later did,
Argentina
following
is
year,
down there.
so
Far.
far, man.
Classic route.
Yeah, it's just a
classic
little
route.
zip,
So anyway,
little zip
we're
down
like,
there from Alaska.
And like, yeah, we all like Alaska's sweet, man. So we were all like, hey, we want to go to Alaska.
It's cold in Alaska. Did you guys remember that?
Did you forget that part?
That's one of the things you learn though as you went on the trip. Like we had packed so much stuff early on that we ended up like either it wore out and we like didn't replace it, or we threw it out because we didn't need it. Like, yeah.
So you were bare bones going to Alaska?
Like it's like
Nuts. I'm
you
not
don't
riding
need to
till
pack
June.
all your stuff with. Like if you really need something, you can buy it. Like so if I was going to go to Alaska, if I really need a coat, I can roll up to a Goodwill and buy a coat if I need to. Like it's just like it doesn't matter. So anyway, from like Washington on the first trip, I went over to like through Idaho, like Coeur d'Alene over into Glacier. Like northern part of Montana.
Yep.
Glacier dropped down to Yellowstone, toward Yellowstone. Really neat story there. So I had come into Yellowstone from the north, saw Old Faithful, all that stuff. Awesome nature there. Came down just like east of where like Grand Teton is, camped there. One of the coolest camping spots in the entire trip.
Really?
Just like beautiful, man. Just like camped there. And the next morning after I woke up there, I started having issues with the bike.
Oh boy.
And I had it a couple other times where actually it was from when I threw the chain in Nicaragua on the dunes. There's stator wires coming off the stator, run up right along the case, right where the chain was. So when I threw the chain, it clipped the wires off the stator. So I had spliced the stator wires right there. And like when it would rain, I would start having misfire issues with the bike. Once you know it, I get up there, haven't had the issue for a while. I start having these stator issues, right? And so I'm like tearing the bike down, like not getting spark. I checked the wires, and then I was getting spark. And so like I'm just chasing electrical stuff. I ended up having a plug get fouled. I wasn't getting spark, replaced it with a different plug, was getting spark. It was just like constant. Like I would get 5 miles and it would die again, and I'd be like tearing the whole bike apart on the side of the road.
By yourself?
By myself, yep. But at that point, like I've worked on the bike enough. Like I kind of know the routine. I've got a spot with all my tools. I just pull them out. Here we go.
And you know how to jack it up without digging rocks. Very important.
Yeah. So anyway, like I was fighting with that thing. I ended up being able to ride through Yellowstone National Park again. And on the north side, I was headed towards like just east in Wyoming. There's a road that crosses back. I think it's from Wyoming back into Montana. It's called Beartooth Pass. Really twisty pass. Classic like motorcycle, like prime motorcycle route for all like twisties in the mountains.
Yep.
And so I was like, hey, I want to go ride that. That's I'm out here. I want to go do that. So I was heading there. Come out of the park, and I started having issues with my bike. And I'm on the side of the road tearing it down. Starts raining. Like just. Terrible situation. Like I'm just like soaked. My bike's all over the side of the road. And anyway, this guy rolls up. I wish I could remember his name. He ended up helping me for a while. Took me back into the town right before the entrance of Yellowstone, and there was a snowmobile shop, but it was like closed. Like we went to a couple different snowmobile shops to see if they had spark plugs. Couldn't get the one I needed. Last one in town. We try it. Knocking on the door. This whole shop's closed. It's like later in the evening. No, it couldn't have been later in the evening. It must have been earlier in the day. Because anyway, somebody that lived actually upstairs heard us, came down. It was like the guy's wife, goes in. Wouldn't you know it, they have a plug that fits. No. And like just like last one on the shelf. Like you go into the snowmobile sled shop, they've got like the whole rack of plugs, right? Like only one that fit my bike. I got that thing and we rolled back out to where my bike was. He shuttled me the whole way. He was actually building a cabin up there, had bought some property. He was from like Indiana. He was like building this like cabin on some land he bought in Wyoming. Anyway, he was going to the local sawyer to pick up lumber to like build his cabin with. So he's like, hey, I got to stop in here and get some lumber. So I got this like old timer dude who's just been living in Wyoming forever, running a sawmill, just like really neat guy, neat like ranch type of deal, right? So anyway, we end up getting back to the bike, which is sitting strewn on the side of the road. It's just like somebody could roll up and I guess nobody's going to take a bike that's in pieces on the side of the road.
Somebody who needed the other spark
plug. Anyway, get it going. So just like another, the Lord providing someone to kind of just come and help me in that moment, right? Yeah, so I leave there. He's like, hey, stop at my place. You can spend the night. You can have dinner with me and my wife, and you can be on your way or whatever. I was like, dude, thank you. I really want to ride this pass. I'm going to ride this pass. I'll come back and spend the night at your place. So I did. I went up, rode the pass, went all over into Montana, rode it back. Just like beautiful country, man. Like Wyoming, Montana are like prime.
Yeah, prime. Lakes and mountains.
Yeah, and just, dude, like free-range cattle. That's one of the scary things, though. It's like you want to look out for cattle in the road because everybody just like grazes their cattle wherever they want out there. Yeah. So anyway, spent the night with that guy. Got up the next morning. So that's northwest of Cody, Wyoming, where I would have stayed that night. Got up the next day, rode all the way across Wyoming, stopped at Devil's Tower, went from Wyoming into South Dakota, went to Mount Rushmore, went to, I think it's like through Needles Highway, which is like a bunch of the Black Hills there, really cool motorcycle route. Then maybe I camped the night right before. I believe I went all the way across Wyoming, camped just before I got out of Wyoming in like Bighorn National Park or something. Then like just stealth camped there. Wasn't supposed to, but I did. And then, so then the start of the day, like going to Mount Rushmore, that was the start of the first like Iron Butt day. So woke up, went to Mount Rushmore, drove Needles Highway, went north to 95, I think it is the interstate. Just started punching east because like that was a few days before the Woodward Dream Cruise in Michigan, which is the massive car show in Detroit, which is what Mom and Dad and Jason and Ethan were all going to be.
That's
out there for.
So
I wanted to meet up with them and be there for that. Yep. So I start punching across, dude. The winds in South Dakota were brutal. Like literally, like leaning the bike like this into the wind, like crosswind across the highway. Like semi would pass me, I'd have to like correct because it would block the wind. I'd have to correct up, and then as soon as the semi was past, and like
terrifying.
Like Sturgis, like which is the big motorcycle rally out there.
Yep.
Was like the week before I was there.
Did you clear it? Did you get through before it happened?
Yeah, well, I was after the fact, and I actually didn't go like through Sturgis at all. But there were tons of like Harley guys.
You do not want to get caught in that.
I'm like cruising on 95, like doing 70 miles an hour, and these guys on Harleys are rolling by, and they're
flipping
just like doing like 95. they were always like wave and kind of like chuckle at me, and I'm just like, So all the way across South Dakota, I'm trying to think, it'd be like Wisconsin, Minnesota, right? Across both of those. And I started, driving all day, man. Like was up early that day, probably like 4:30, 5 o'clock. Didn't stop driving. Went, drove all night, like rain and lightning storm, like through Minnesota, man. Like some of the most dangerous riding I've probably done, just because like you're riding at night on the interstate, semis all around.
Oh man, yeah.
No way, man.
Rain and the whole deal. Down through Illinois, around Chicago, back up into Michigan. So I think to Detroit. So that was somewhere that had to have been around like 1,000 to 1,100 miles, somewhere around there. I hit the 1,000-mile mark before the 24-hour mark that day.
Official.
Which, dude, I was so
You should
jazzed.
get a belt buckle or something.
I remember getting to Ethan and Emily's, and like they do have patches. You can actually like keep your receipts and like send them in and do that
They're
whole thing
official.
to like prove it, and then like this organization will send you a patch.
You should do that.
I should. I actually have
awesome.
the receipts somewhere from one of the times. So
$1,000 for the patch. That's an exclusive glove. You must have been tired. Like,
dude, I was so whipped, like, because it was like, I don't know, 8, 9 a.m. when I got to Ethan and Emily's.
Yeah,
and
but
so,
also
like,
you're not on like a roadster. You're not.
oh yeah,
You're
it's
not on something comfortable.
dude. Like, that was kind of the whole trip, right? Like 18,000 miles on a bike. You kind of learn like all these different positions to ride the bike. So you're switching sides of the bike you're riding on.
Yeah.
We had like the crash bars on the front, so we would like kick a leg up. We had all these different ways of like resituating ourselves just to try to keep from getting super sore. But
I know about that when I go for my 30 minute snowmobile rides and my thumb starts getting sore, so I have to,
yeah.
So, like,
same thing, right?
I've driven that kind of like hours and miles in a car where you can very easily fall asleep. But like on a motorcycle, are you just awake though? I've never ridden that far on a motorcycle.
It was bad. Like you still get tired on the bike.
You
Yeah,
get
you
a
still
little
get the
sleepy?
same thing for sure.
Okay.
Obviously you have more of the elements coming at you,
Right.
so that's helps a little bit. But when you're that tired,
Doesn't matter.
like, dude, I remember I think I probably drank like 2 Red Bulls, and then once it got into the night, like it was literally like I was like just ticking off tanks of gas, which was like 275 miles, 280 miles I could get on a tank. Yeah. And so like it was just like get to the next gas stop, get to the next gas stop, just like
Get to the next
like,
caffeine junction.
Every time I would stop, it was just like 4-hour energy and like an energy drink to go. It was like not healthy at all.
No.
I remember the one time when it was raining real bad, I pulled off at a rest stop, and plugged in my phone because my phone was dying. And like the rain, it was starting to short out like my USB unit to charge my phone on the bike. And so I was like, I got to be able to route. So I was like, plugged my phone into the rest stop and like snoozed for 20 minutes, back up, jump back on the bike, keep punching.
Power nap.
So yeah. Yep.
Dude.
Yeah. Crazy. So, but anyway, like got to Ethan and Emily, slept for a couple hours, got up, ate some food, and went to a dream cruise. Looked at car
like
show.
It never happened.
Yeah,
it never happened.
And then so from there, Jason had bought his Buell at that time. You
nice.
probably remember the Buell, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He had rode out
Batmobile.
to Michigan that time, and
That's
so
a
then
far
we rode
ride on that bike.
Oh yeah, 9 hours.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but that's also a crotch
That's
rock.
the most comfortable bike. That is not the most
You're
comfortable
probably
bike.
living high on the comfortability on the way back.
Yeah, so we ended up riding back together. And crazy story, we actually got to Niagara. We crossed to Niagara because we went through Canada from Michigan.
Okay.
And Jason burned up his fuel pump on the bridge crossing at Niagara. And so then we were stuck in a parking lot there. And because he was so low on fuel and ended up running the bike out, and it burned up the pump because it's lubricated fuel pump, right? And so we were stuck there. Corwin and Dan came and picked us up.
I remember that.
I actually never completed
Dude,
the
I
full
remember
trip
that.
on the bike. Yeah.
I remember that.
Never
Corwin
actually
asked me
made
if
it
I wanted to
home
go. I'm pretty
under the
sure.
bike's
Why
own
was
power.
I home?
I probably should have, but like
Does that bother you?
a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was the first
gotcha.
trip.
Yeah.
Corwin and Dan, we were like called because it was later in the day at that point. We're like, hey, can you come pick me up?
Dude, I remember that. I think he reached out to me. I must have been home.
Yeah.
And he was like, you want to go?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, the
was
Buells
like,
are
no.
made by Harley, right? Is that true?
Well, so they were like,
Leave it to the
kind of.
Harley.
They were under the Harley company in some.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Is it Eric Buell, I believe was the guy's name, designed the race bikes, and it was kind of like this sub company.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
maybe he got bought by Harley or something like that.
Yeah.
So still held the name of Buell, but was under the Harley.
Yeah.
And then you were home.
V-twins, man, sound like a beast.
Yeah.
That
It's
is
like
awesome.
a crotch rocket.
Yeah.
Torque monster, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And then you made it back.
That's cool.
Back. Yeah.
Crazy.
Worked that fall doing construction, and then
Then adulting started.
no, not yet.
Oh, really?
That was
Oh,
kind of like
then
the
you
start
went-
of the
then you
whole
went EMI in
East
Africa.
Africa, yeah.
Man, we need a whole nother podcast for
Yeah, we're gonna have you
Africa.
back. We can talk about that one.
seriously.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh, a question about Mount Rushmore, because I just saw this on Facebook. Nancy Pelosi was trying to get Biden on there, or
Okay.
said that he should be on there.
Okay.
Somebody did a markup drawing. Did you
Oh,
see
boy.
it? It's just the back
I
of
did
his
not.
head.
Oh, I did not see that. That sounds hilarious.
Oh man.
That was
Anyways,
hilarious. Yeah.
anyways, I thought that was funny.
I kept
The,
looking for the city of gold. I couldn't find it.
Yeah, dude, what an
Good old national
experience,
treasure.
man.
I don't think I've ever like. So I'm sure.
I'm actually kind of jealous of, like, I would love to have, or I'd love to do something like that, especially with like a couple buddies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a
You'll
blast.
never forget that.
I'm sure you went around to some churches or, had give some testimony, like talk about the trip and all that. But have you ever talked about it? And this wasn't even in super detail because, like, I'm sure there's some details, right?
Yeah.
So this is like a generalization. This is a summary of the story.
Very
but, like,
much
have
so.
you ever been able to tell it like this?
Not like
The way that you
such
told
an
it
overall
today.
summary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I feel like whenever I've talked about it in the past, you just kind of like pick like 2 or 3 stories and tell those 2 or 3 stories, and that's about all you get to touch on.
So I figured that was the case. Like,
when I've like post trip a few times that I like being around Tyler and Isaac and kind of reliving the stories with them.
Yeah.
Then you're gonna really get into the nitty gritty of it, and you kind of
Yeah.
you all recall different parts and pieces of it.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so
it's really
much.
cool that you get that
It's
you
like-
kind of just told like a more of a whole summary of the entire trip, probably for the first time.
Yeah.
To somebody
sure.
else. Yeah, and like I'd never really heard that about. I didn't really hear much about the trip either. But then I was thinking, well, he probably hasn't ever really told the whole story.
Yeah.
Just more like snippets at gatherings or whatever. So that's pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear
no,
more.
there's
Like,
a lot
I'm
of
sure
other
there's
things
so
I'm
much
brushing
more.
over that I've forgotten even.
Yeah.
It's it was a once in a lifetime trip for sure. And
I believe it.
Yeah, I think kind of going back to what we were saying before about having some experiences before the normal life starts, and you got your 9 to 5 or your job or whatever you're working on, to get some of those experiences would be so valuable.
Yeah, I think it just made my world so much bigger, right? First real time that I've kind of been out of the country, you kind of experience culture shock. You realize that not everywhere in the world's like the U.S., right? There's, there was just so much good learning for me in that regard over the whole trip. And really, I think the trip and just kind of meeting with people along the way and just kind of how the Lord worked through that definitely kind of directed me into the like wanting to do something mission-based next. And that's kind of like through Paul Duke in Corpus Christi. He was the one that kind of tipped me on the EMI. I started looking into it as soon as I got back, and was kind of like, this is a really good fit. Like, I can use my engineering skills, go overseas and serve and using my engineering for
in Africa,
a real, tangible, cause and mission, right? And so that was really cool.
Yeah.
Did you ride your bike there too?
I did, dude. When I was over there, though,
Now, did you drive it from
I'm half tempted, like, because Pat's in Entebbe, and so I was actually just like north of where Pat's living now.
Okay.
In Kajansi, which is a town between the capital of Kampala and Entebbe, and I would look at, like, they kind of have like somewhat of a social media marketplace over there, and so I would get on there and like look for motorcycles and stuff, be like,
fly over, and
maybe
then
I can swing this, like maybe I can buy a bike over here and ride across Africa or do something. That definitely happened. Like, I definitely looked into it, but it wasn't.
You could have a
didn't
ride
really
across
work out.
all 6 rideable continents.
Dude.
Like, maybe in your future, maybe. You could write a
Fun.
book and make a
I
lot of
gotta,
money.
I gotta get Abby on board. After Abby and I got married, we were initially planning to do like a trip across Canada. There's a few like adventure routes, like all gravel across the U.S. and Canada that I'd love to do sometime. And Abby and I were actually like seriously thinking about doing that, like, because she got her motorcycle license, or was working on getting her motorcycle license. We got her a bike, so it was in the works. But then kids and better things now. So
Yeah.
Comes for all of us at some point.
Yep.
Comes for all
Better
of us.
things.
Yeah.
for sure, man.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, I mean, we're kind of running late on time, but I would love to have you on again if you would come on. This was a blast.
sure.
This was really fun.
Love to do it again.
Dude,
Yeah.
such a greght story.
Yeah, sorry, I've just been going and going and going, and
No, not at all.
Really
Are you
been
kidding?
able to get questions
No.
in.
This is exactly how I wanted it to go. The less I talk, the better. Let's just put it that way. But no, we would love to have you on again, talk about EMI. EMI?
Yeah.
Is it EMI?
Engineering Ministries International.
Okay.
Yeah, EMI is just
EMI in Africa,
acronym.
and then some of the, other stuff too. What's going on in your life? You
Yeah.
know, what are you trying to get better at, and that kind of stuff. We really like that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
if you'd come again, we'd appreciate it. But
sure,
Nick,
man.
anything else?
Super duper. No, yeah, ditto.
Yeah, thanks for coming, man.
Keep us in your.
Thanks for having me on, man. It's
schedule.
a privilege to be able to come and do this, and
Yeah,
yeah,
get some quality time.
For sure.
Yeah, it's important.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Peace.